You are not poor. That is the first thing to understand. You are not struggling in the way people normally imagine struggling. Your car starts in the morning. You pay your bills. There is food in your fridge. You probably have subscriptions you forgot about months ago. Maybe you take a vacation once a year if you plan carefully. From the outside, your life looks fine. Maybe even comfortable. And that is exactly why this problem is dangerous. Because poverty gets your attention. Crisis gets your attention. Emergencies get your attention. But the middle-class trap does not. The middle-class trap does not arrive like a disaster. It does not kick down the door and announce itself. It arrives quietly. It arrives as comfort. Just enough comfort to keep moving. Just enough progress to convince you things are working. Just enough income to believe the next raise, the next promotion, or next year will finally be the moment everything changes. But then next year arrives, and somehow the feeling stays exactly the same. You make more than before, yet still feel pressure. You earn more than before, yet still feel behind. You are moving, but not arriving. Eventually, a strange realization starts creeping into your mind. You begin wondering whether life is actually getting better, or whether the treadmill simply got faster. That is the middle-class trap. Not poverty, not crisis, not disaster. Fine. Fine is the trap. Because fine is comfortable enough to stay inside and uncomfortable enough to quietly consume years of your life without ever forcing the honest conversation that changes direction. And that is what makes this frustrating. Most people inside this trap are not lazy. They are not reckless. They are not making obviously terrible decisions. They are doing exactly what they were told to do. Show up. Work hard. Be responsible. Save a little. Keep moving. And despite following the instructions, something still feels off. Because effort was never the problem. The problem is structural. Most people spend years treating symptoms without understanding the machine creating those symptoms underneath. They assume they need more discipline, better budgeting, less coffee, more sacrifice, more productivity, more hustle. But what if the issue is not you? What if the issue is that the system naturally pushes ordinary people toward outcomes they never consciously chose? Because if something is structural, motivation alone cannot solve it. Understanding the structure solves it. So let us start with how the trap actually works. The process usually begins innocently. You get a job. The job pays you a salary. The salary covers your expenses and leaves something left over. And that leftover amount matters more than most people realize because it represents something invisible. Potential. That leftover money represents future freedom, future options, future choices. It represents the raw material from which wealth could eventually be built. Then something happens. Something almost invisible. Your lifestyle adjusts. Not because you are irresponsible, because you are human. The apartment becomes slightly nicer because now you can afford it. The car gets upgraded because the old one needed repairs anyway, and the payment feels manageable. Food delivery becomes more common because work is exhausting and convenience feels earned. Subscriptions multiply because each one individually feels harmless. None of these decisions feel reckless. Each one feels reasonable. And that is exactly why they become dangerous. Because nobody wakes up one morning and says, today, I would like to slowly build a life that permanently requires maximum effort to maintain. Nobody consciously chooses that. People simply make small reasonable decisions repeatedly. Then years later they discover something uncomfortable. They accidentally built obligations instead of freedom. Commitments instead of options. A lifestyle that quietly requires every dollar of the income that was originally supposed to build something larger than the lifestyle itself. This is lifestyle inflation. People hear that phrase constantly, but rarely understand why it actually matters. Because lifestyle inflation does not simply consume money. It consumes margin. And margin may be one of the most important financial concepts almost nobody talks about seriously. Margin is breathing room. Margin is the distance between what arrives and what is already committed. Margin is what keeps unexpected problems from becoming disasters. Margin is what allows someone to say no when they need to say no, and yes when they genuinely want to say yes. Margin creates options. And when margin disappears, life starts feeling heavier in ways people struggle to explain. You notice anxiety before opening your banking app. You notice stress before certain work meetings. You notice yourself checking account balances before weekends. You notice the strange feeling of earning more than you have ever earned, while somehow feeling no safer than you felt 3 years earlier. That feeling is not random. That feeling is income without margin. And income without margin is one of the defining experiences of the middle-class trap. Because earning more does not automatically create wealth. Income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what arrives. Wealth is what remains. Income is visible. Wealth is invisible. And because income is visible, society rewards it constantly. Promotions receive attention. New cars receive admiration. Lifestyle upgrades receive congratulations. Visible success receives applause. Social media rewards it. Advertising rewards it. Conversations reward it. Meanwhile, quiet investing receives almost no attention. Building margin receives almost no attention. Owning assets receives almost no attention. Watching compound growth quietly build beneath the surface receives almost no validation at all. So naturally people optimize for the visible gain. And the visible gain creates invisible problems. Then eventually people notice the trap. And when people notice the trap, they attempt escape. The first escape attempt usually sounds completely logical. Earn more. Get promoted. Switch companies. Start a side hustle. Because if money feels tight, more money should solve the problem. And at first it works. The paycheck grows. Life improves. There is relief. Maybe for 6 months. Maybe for a year. Then something strange starts happening again. Life recalibrates. The apartment gets upgraded. The vacations improve. Spending expands. Expectations quietly rise. Nothing dramatic. Nothing reckless. Just reasonable upgrades repeated over time. Then one day people look around and realize something uncomfortable. The treadmill is still there. It just became more expensive. This is why people earning $80,000 and people earning $150,000 often describe exactly the same feeling. Pressure. Because income alone rarely fixes structural problems. More income without a different system simply creates a larger version of the same life. Then people try the second escape attempt. Extreme saving. Cut everything. Stop spending. Track every dollar. Optimize every purchase. Become hyper-disciplined. This works better. It is closer. But many people accidentally turn saving into the finish line instead of the starting line. Because savings are not the destination. Savings are fuel. People save aggressively for years and eventually build numbers that finally make them feel safe. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, maybe more. And then something surprising happens. Nothing. Because the money sits. It waits. Years pass. The account slowly grows while inflation quietly keeps taking small bites out of the future. The saving happened. The deployment never happened. And comfort quietly gets mistaken for progress. Then there is a third failed escape attempt almost nobody recognizes while it's happening. Waiting. Waiting until income increases. Waiting until life becomes less chaotic. Waiting until work becomes easier. Waiting until there is more certainty. Waiting until future you finally becomes more organized and more disciplined than present you. But life rarely becomes simpler. Usually responsibilities multiply. Careers become more demanding. Children happen. Parents get older. Health changes. Life does not clear space for financial decisions. Life usually becomes more crowded. And suddenly 5 years disappear. Then 10. And that is why escaping the middle class was never really about effort. Because most people inside the trap are already putting in enormous effort. The issue is sequence. People who eventually escape tend to follow a pattern. Not immediately. Not perfectly. But eventually. The first thing they do is create margin deliberately and protect it aggressively. Not by cutting everything they enjoy. Not by turning life into a financial punishment. But by understanding that every dollar of margin is a dollar that now has options instead of obligations. They stop allowing income to automatically expand lifestyle. They stop treating raises as permission slips for larger commitments. They look at the leftover and ask a different question. Not what can I afford now, but what can this build over time? Because that question sounds small but changes everything that follows. Then they automate that margin before lifestyle ever touches it. This is where many people accidentally get the sequence backwards. Most people spend first and invest whatever survives. People who escape reverse it completely. A specific percentage moves automatically on payday before convenience purchases, before lifestyle spending, before any of the ordinary daily decisions that silently consume the potential. Not because they are more disciplined than everyone else. Because they understand something important. Discipline gets tired. Systems do not. Willpower runs out. Automation does not. And then something deeper starts shifting. Identity changes. Most people spend their entire working lives thinking like earners. Earners ask, what can I afford? Owners ask, what can this build? That difference sounds almost philosophical, but it is completely practical. Because someone thinking like an earner receives a raise and immediately asks which lifestyle improvement finally makes sense. Someone thinking like an owner receives the same raise and immediately asks what percentage of this can become an asset that works without me. One mindset expands a lifestyle. The other expands ownership. And ownership eventually begins creating something that effort alone cannot produce regardless of how hard someone works. Distance. Distance between a paycheck and survival. Distance between one bad month and disaster. Distance between an unexpected opportunity and having to say no because the financial situation does not allow it. People consistently underestimate how much this distance changes ordinary life. Not through dramatic moments. Through the quiet accumulation of options that did not exist before. The option to negotiate at work without desperation. The option to leave something that is wrong for you without immediate catastrophe. The option to pursue something that genuinely interests you without waiting for the perfect financially safe moment that never quite arrives. And then comes deployment. Margin gets protected. Margin gets automated. And then margin gets put to work. Index funds for people starting from zero, accessible. Consistent. Requiring no specialized knowledge. Building quietly over years in the background of an ordinary life. Real estate for people ready to add complexity in exchange for income and appreciation and tax advantages that employment incomes simply cannot access. Business ownership for people ready to accept higher risk in exchange for the highest potential returns and the most complete form of financial independence. Most people who successfully escape the middle class use some combination of all three over time. They do not start with everything. They start with what is accessible. Then they build toward what is powerful. And alongside all of it, they build income that exists outside employment before they need it to exist. This is the step almost everyone skips because it feels unnecessary when life is stable. But salary dependence creates a specific type of fragility that only becomes visible when something disrupts the salary. Jobs disappear. Companies restructure. Industries change. Unexpected things happen to careful people who did nothing wrong. And people discover their entire life depended upon a single source they had no real control over. So build before you need it. Build it slowly. Build it imperfectly. Build it during the comfortable periods when urgency feels low and the pressure to succeed immediately is manageable. Because comfortable periods are exactly when the trap becomes its most powerful. When things feel fine. Urgency disappears. And when urgency disappears, months disappear. Then years. Escaping the middle class almost never feels dramatic while it is happening. No movie moments. No giant breakthroughs. No overnight transformations. Usually it feels completely ordinary. You sit at a kitchen table one evening calculating your real number for the first time. You automate investments. You protect margin. You redirect income before lifestyle touches it. You start something small on the side. You continue. Days pass. Weeks pass. Months pass. Nothing feels different. Until eventually one day something does. Maybe restructuring rumors begin spreading at work. Co-workers start whispering. People refresh inboxes. People quietly calculate how long they could survive without a paycheck. And suddenly you notice something unexpected about yourself. You care. Of course you care. But underneath the concern something feels different. You do not feel terror. Because options exist now. Margin exists. Assets exist. And people consistently misunderstand where confidence comes from. They think confidence comes from personality. Sometimes it does. But sometimes confidence comes from stability. Sometimes confidence comes from knowing one bad event would hurt, but would not destroy your life. That changes conversations. That changes decisions. That changes opportunities. Because opportunities usually require space. And trapped people rarely have space. The middle class itself is not the enemy. Comfort is not the enemy. Stability is not the enemy. The trap is the enemy. The ceiling is the enemy. Spending decades moving while believing movement automatically means progress. That is the enemy. The path out is not complicated. Know your number. Protect your margin. Become an owner. Deploy capital. Build income outside employment. Simple does not mean easy, but simple works. And it starts with one uncomfortable question. Do you actually know your number? If this felt different from a finance content you normally hear. If it felt less like motivation and more like a structure you can actually use, subscribe. Because this channel is not about pretending wealth happens overnight or selling fantasies that disappear after 30 seconds. It is about understanding the invisible systems shaping your future while most people never notice them. And if someone came to mind while listening, someone working hard, earning decent money, doing everything approximately right, and quietly wondering why the ceiling keeps sitting there, send them this video, not as advice, just as a map. Because sometimes people do not need motivation. Sometimes they just need to understand the structure they are inside. And sometimes a map heard at the right moment changes an entire direction. See you in the next one.